Right now, Japan owns more of America's debt than any other country on Earth, over $1.2 trillion. And for the first time in decades, they're starting to pull back. If Japan keeps selling, your mortgage rate goes up, your car loan gets more expensive, and the U.S. government might have a very, very bad time finding anyone else willing to lend it money. This is the story of the world's quietest financial relationship and why it might be about to break. Here's something most Americans don't know. The U.S. government doesn't just print money to pay its bills. It borrows by selling Treasury bonds. Basically an IOU. Give us your money now, we'll pay you back later with interest. And someone has to buy those IOUs. As of mid-2026, the U.S. national debt is closing in on $40 trillion. Foreign countries alone hold over $9.3 trillion of that. Sitting at the very top of that list, bigger than China, bigger than the UK, is Japan, holding roughly $1.2 trillion in U.S. debt. For over a decade, Japan has been America's single biggest foreign lender. Quietly, reliably, without much fanfare. That's about to change. To understand why this matters, you need to understand why Japan was buying all this debt in the first place. For 30 years, Japan had almost zero interest rates at home. Japanese bonds paid investors basically nothing. So Japanese banks, pension funds, and insurance companies looked overseas, and U.S. Treasury bonds were the safest, most reliable place to park trillions of dollars and actually earn something. It was a win-win. Japan got a safe return, America got a steady buyer for its debt. But here's the twist. Japan has its own debt problem. Its public debt is now over 200% of its GDP, more than double America's as a share of the economy. And the Bank of Japan has started raising interest rates at home for the first time in a generation, which means Japanese investors now have a reason to bring their money home instead of lending it to Washington. So what actually happens if Japan slows down or stops? First, Treasury has to find new buyers or pay more to keep old ones. If demand drops, the U.S. has to offer higher interest rates to attract buyers, basic supply and demand. Second, those higher rates ripple through the entire U.S. economy. Treasury yields are the baseline for almost every other interest rate in America. When they rise, mortgage rates rise, car loan rates rise, credit card APRs rise, business loans get more expensive. You don't need to own a single bond to feel this. It hits everyone. Third, the interest bill on the debt itself explodes. The U.S. is already spending over $1 trillion a year just on interest payments before Japan even pulls back further. That's more than the entire U.S. defense budget. Every extra basis point of interest adds tens of billions in cost every single year. And fourth, it becomes self-reinforcing. More debt costs more to service. More interest expense means bigger deficits. Bigger deficits mean more borrowing. And more borrowing means needing even more buyers, right as one of your biggest buyers is walking away. Economists have a name for this. They call it a debt spiral. Now, before you panic, let's be honest about where things actually stand. Japan hasn't dumped its treasury holdings. It's still the largest foreign holder in the world. What's happening is more subtle, the growth has slowed, and Japan has already stepped in more than once to defend its own currency, including selling some U.S. assets to do it. Meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury isn't blind to this. There are tools, auction structuring, Federal Reserve intervention designed specifically to prevent a sudden fire sale scenario. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The dollar's share of global reserves has already slipped from around 72% in 2001 to under 60% today. Other buyers, Saudi Arabia, Canada, are stepping up, but none of them can fully replace $1. $2 trillion from Japan if it ever left in one motion. This isn't a five-alarm fire. It's a slow leak. And slow leaks are exactly the kind of thing that get ignored until they aren't. This isn't a Wall Street problem. This is a kitchen table problem. If Treasury yields climb because foreign demand weakens, that 7% mortgage might become 8%, then 9%. Your government's ability to fund Social Security, Medicare, defense, all of it gets squeezed by interest payments eating a bigger slice of the budget. And every politician promising tax cuts or new spending has to reckon with a lender base that's no longer guaranteed to show up. Japan buying U.S. debt was never just a financial footnote. It was one of the quiet pillars holding up the entire American cost of living. So, is Japan about to pull the plug on America's debt? No, not overnight. But the era of blind, easy demand for U.S. debt is ending. And when your biggest lender starts asking harder questions about whether it's worth it, you should probably be asking those questions too. If you want to understand the next country in this story, China's 18-year retreat from U.S. debt, that video's coming next. Subscribe so you don't miss it.